Welcome to the Body First Healing Podcast. I'm Britt Piper, survivor turned somatic experiencing practitioner and author. If you feel stuck in old patterns, overwhelmed by your emotions, or disconnected from yourself, you're in the right place. Each week, I'll share practical somatic tools, personal stories, and conversations to support you in building a more regulated and embodied life. Because you can't talk your way through healing, you have to feel your way through. Together, we'll explore what it means to come back to yourself and create a life that feels safe enough to fully live in. I am so glad that you're here. Hello, my friend. Happy Wednesday, and welcome back to another episode here on the Body First Healing Podcast. I am your host, Britt Piper, survivor turned somatic experiencing practitioner, author, and trainer. So today, you guys, we are going to be spending time with a theme that I feel like has been knocking on so many of our doors, and especially in the seasons where life feels full or loud or relentless, we are going to explore the art of slowing down. And when I say slowing down, I don't mean quitting your life, okay, or abandoning your responsibilities, or becoming a person who lives on a mountaintop and never answers text messages, although that would be nice. I mean learning how to live at a pace that your nervous system can actually participate in. A pace where your body is not trailing 10 steps behind you, trying to catch up. So today we're going to traverse a few different topics in this theme of slowing down. We're going to explore why the body is wired to slow down, why we resist it. We're going to discuss how the vagal brake helps us to shift our pace, how urgency can really get encoded in our physiology, and then, of course, simple somatic ways to really slow down inside the life that you already have. My hope is that this episode feels less like a lecture on rest and more like your body being invited into a different rhythm. And that as we move through this together, you feel not only permission to really, really slow down, but also have this deeper understanding of why your resistance to slowing down makes so much sense. Now, before we dive in, I of course just want to say thank you to those of you who've been listening, who've been sharing episodes and leaving reviews. It is truly such a gift, you guys, to know that this work is landing in your homes, in your cars, on your walks, and your nervous systems. All right, so let's begin with the place that most of us really start, okay? Living at a pace that our bodies were never built for. So if you're listening to this, there is a good chance that you live with some degree of go mode as your default. And you may be the only responsible one, the one who remembers the schedule, the meals, the bills, and even the emotional temperature of the room and within your home. You carry the work, family, friendships, logistics, and even your own healing. And then somewhere along the way, that pace became normal. But normal does not mean regulated, okay? And that's a lesson that I and many others have had to learn the hard way. So from a nervous system perspective, many of us are living at a baseline of subtle sympathetic activation. Sympathetic, again, is the branch of the autonomic nervous system that handles mobilization. It gets you out of bed. It helps you to respond to emails, to clean your house, meet deadlines, drive to and from, parent, show up. Sympathetic is not the enemy. It's actually very necessary. But, and this is a big but, the problem is when sympathetic activation stops being a state that you move in and out of, and it becomes more of a constant background hum. Okay, it can feel like a quiet hurry running through your muscles, your heart rate, your thoughts, your to-do list. Your body could be slightly leaned forward. Your shoulders might be a little higher than they need to be. Your jaw might be working harder than you even notice. So reflect for just a moment. Do you recognize yourself in that pattern? Do you wake up already thinking about the day ahead? Do you move from task to task without feeling like you fully arrive in any of them? And when you finally sit on the couch, is your body buzzing? Or do you go straight into scrolling or planning the next day? When people tell you to rest, do you know what that means beyond just simply collapsing? Imagine it like this. You're still on the outside, okay, but you're still sprinting on the inside. Now, for a long time, this was me. And I dive deep into this in a previous episode. It's actually episode 7, titled Burnout Isn't Failure. So feel free to revisit that conversation. But my default nervous system state was forward. It was mobilized. It was momentum. Give me a project, a dream, a vision, a crisis, and my system would rise to meet it. I could outwork my grief. I could outplan my fear and outrun all of my needs. And I wore my productivity as armor because I didn't know any other way. What I didn't see at the time was that my body was quietly absorbing the cost of that pace. My back, my jaw, my headaches, my sleep, even the way my digestion held on for dear life. And what I also didn't realize then was that my pace was not just a personality quirk, okay? It was my physiology, shaped by trauma, by culture, and conditioning. You see, slowing down is not about becoming a different person. It's about helping the person that you are move at a pace where your body can actually come along. And to understand how to do that, we need to look at where our bodies learned rhythm in the first place, which is not in our calendars and inboxes, okay? It is in nature. So let's talk about seasons, cycles, and why your body wants to slow down in the fall and winter. Now, I first just want to state that we seem to forget that our nervous system did not evolve inside of an office or on a smartphone. Okay. It evolved in relationship with the earth, with light, with darkness, with temperature, with food availability and migration and seasons. In the closing chapter of my book, I actually explore how everything around us in the natural world operates on these cycles. The moon waxes and wanes, trees leaf out, they fruit, they shed, and they rest. Animals move, they mate, they hibernate, they wake. Even our soil has periods of intense growth and then periods of apparent stillness that are actually deep integration. So all that to say, nothing blooms year around. Nothing is in harvest all the time. In the fall and winter, especially in climates with more dramatic seasons, the world naturally slows down. And we can see that in the way that the light shifts, that the days become shorter and the nights become longer, temperatures drop. And in these seasons, many animals either migrate or they reduce their activity. And plants follow these seasons too. They pull their energy inward, away from the leaves, toward the roots. So there is less outward production, okay, and more inward conservation. Now, your body responds to these environmental changes too, even if you're not consciously aware of it. So, for instance, light influences your circadian rhythm, which is why melatonin rises earlier in darker months. Your cortisol patterns also shift, and sleep needs can increase because of that. You see, your biology mirrors the rhythms and cycles of the living natural world. And because of that, there is an ancient biological pull that we have towards rest, reflection, and inwardness. And if we zoom in, this becomes even clearer when we look at our stress response cycle. Now, a stress response is what we go through many times a day when we experience activation or stress, and then we come back into rest and digest or settling. But what people don't realize is that the stress cycle isn't complete when the threat or the stress or the demand passes, It actually completes when the body gets to move through mobilization and then back into restoration. And it's that last phase, the recovery phase, that most of us skip. So if you think again of nature, restoration is built into every cycle. So then we can easily say that stress without restoration is like a season without winter. Okay, the system never gets to reset. And there's also a biological difference as well in how our cycles run. And what I mean by that is that men tend to operate on a 24-hour hormonal rhythm where energy, focus, and output peak and reset every single day. Women, however, function on a roughly 28-day infradian rhythm. Okay, our energy, metabolism, sleep needs, and our emotional bandwidth shift week by week. So when we expect ourselves to function like we're on a daily cycle instead of a monthly one as women, we're already working against our own biology. There is a biological mismatch. Now, if you want to go deeper into this specific topic, I also speak on the topic of cycle syncing in episode 7, that burnout episode that I recently mentioned. So again, feel free to circle back to that one after this episode. Okay, so we're talking about how we have these cycles where rest is really necessary, right? Reset, restoration. But the thing is, our cultural script often does the opposite, right? So think about the end of the year. We have the fourth quarter, the holiday season, the end of year push. We have social gatherings during that time, financial stress, emotional triggers, travel. You might be even feeling that right now as we're navigating the holidays. And let's not forget to mention the family dynamics that happen around this time. So on paper, winter is often our busiest time. So your body is receiving one message from the internal environment that says, slow down, turn inward, conserve. And then it's receiving a different signal from your external environment and life that says, speed up, perform, produce, attend, host, finalize, right? So when these two messages conflict, the nervous system has to decide which one to follow. And usually, because we override our biology with obligation, we follow the calendar and we ignore the season. And this creates what I call seasonal dissonance, when the ecosystem of your body knows that it needs something different, but your life is not arranging around that truth. And over time, this dissonance can look like mood changes, increased anxiety, sleep disruptions, immune system dips, burnout, or just a vague or overall sense of being off that you can't explain. So slowing down in this context is actually not indulgent. It is ecological. It is aligning your rhythm with the rhythm that you were built for. And that doesn't mean, again, moving to a cabin in the woods and canceling everything, canceling the holidays. It more so means looking at your life and asking, where can I honor the season that I'm in, even in small ways, so that my body is not constantly marching against its own environment. Now, of course, we're going to talk about how to do that in small ways a little later in the episode. But first, I want to spend time with something that often blocks us from even trying to slow down in the first place, which is this deep fear that if we slow down, everything will fall apart. And even as I say that, I would invite you to tracking your body if that feels familiar and that feels true. So let's talk about why we resist slowing down, okay, which usually ties back to trauma, attachment, and our identity. Now, I want you to consider something, okay? If slowing down were only about scheduling more rest, then most of us would have done it by now. Right? We're smart. We read the books. We know that our body needs a different pace. So why is it so hard to actually change? It's because slowing down is not just a strategy or a lifestyle shift. It is nervous system exposure. Now, let me break that down. If you grew up in chaos, in conflict or unpredictability, then stillness did not feel safe. Slowness did not feel safe. Quiet did not feel safe. And in many homes, the most dangerous moments happened at night or on the weekends or when everyone was relaxing, right? Maybe that's when the arguments exploded. Maybe that's when the caregiver was drinking. Maybe that's when you were most likely to be criticized, shamed, or even hurt. And your body remembers that. It remembers all of it. So now, as an adult, when you sit on the couch and you try to slow down, your system does not register, this is restful. It registers, this is when things go wrong. And that shows up somatically in the body. Your heart rate starts to increase, your thoughts start to spin, you feel restless, you feel numb, and you suddenly remember things that you should be doing. You grab your phone, you start cleaning, you scroll, you work, you do anything to avoid that unstructured quiet. But I encourage you to take this in, okay? Slowing down is threatening, not because you're weak, but because your nervous system has associated or equated stillness with danger. Now, there's another layer here too, and that's that many of us built our identity on being the one who keeps things going. The responsible one, the capable one, the achiever, the helper, the caregiver, the one who anticipates everyone's needs before they ask. Again, if you've read my book, if you've listened to previous episodes, you know this is me or was me through and through. And what I most commonly see in my practice and in the Body First Healing program is that identity was often forged in childhood or even passed down generationally, like it was in my lineage of independent women. And this identity was forged in childhood as a way to stay connected and to stay safe. So in other words, if you kept things running, you were needed. If you were successful, if you got good grades, if you accomplished things, you were praised. If you stayed on top of everything, maybe that meant you could prevent chaos. And so over time, that urgency became intertwined with worth. So when you consider slowing down, it can feel like a threat, not only to your safety, but to your sense of who you are. And that might start to show up as you subconsciously questioning, if I stop doing so much, will people still need me? If I say no, will I be abandoned? If I rest, am I selfish? Or if I slow down, will I lose my edge, my advantage, my opportunities, my income, my relationship? So no, your resistance to slowing down is not laziness, okay? It's actually loyalty. It is loyalty to the strategies and the younger parts of you that kept you alive. Now, the invitation of this work is not to rip those strategies away, okay? But to slowly show your system that there are new options available that do not require constant motion. And to make that possible, we need to understand just one more piece of the physiological puzzle here, okay? And that is the vagal brake. Okay, so for my science nerds out there like me, you'll love this part of today's episode. Let's talk about the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is a major player in your nervous system. Now, it runs from your brainstem, which is the lower region of the brain, and it goes down through your face, your throat, your heart, your lungs, your diaphragm, and into your gut. Okay, it's involved in social engagement, in digestion, in heart rate, and the ability to feel safe inside your body, in your environment, and with other people. Now, the vagal brake is a term that was coined by Dr. Stephen Porges, who is the developer of the polyvagal theory, right? The newest updated research on the nervous system. And the vagal brake is a term that describes how efficiently your vagus nerve can slow your heart rate, and your overall arousal or activation or stress response, we could say, when the environment becomes safe enough. So imagine it like this, okay? You're driving a car. Now, when you're driving a car, you don't want only an accelerator and then a brick wall, right? You want a brake that lets you gently decrease speed, adjust to the curves, and come to a gentle stop when needed. Now, in a nervous system with good vagal tone, you can move into activation, which is the sympathetic charge of fight or flight, when life demands it. And then you can use that brake, that vagal brake, to return to a calmer baseline. So you might feel startled, for instance, but then you can settle. You might work hard, but then you can rest. You might have a difficult conversation that feels really stressful and activating, but then you can come back into connection, right? So there's movement between states. Now, in a system that's been living in chronic stress or unresolved trauma, the brake can become less responsive. It either doesn't engage easily or it slams so hard that you crash into this shutdown response. Think of it like this. Have you ever been fine, we could say? Okay, you're moving fast, you're getting things done, and then suddenly you feel like your body hits a wall. Now you're exhausted, you're numb, you're foggy, you feel heavy in your body. So that is not true rest, right? That is the dorsal vagal collapse. It's your shutdown response. It is your body pulling the plug because it did not have access to gentle deceleration. Think of it like the emergency brake. Now, this is why so many people only slow down when they get sick, when they get injured or emotionally flooded. And that's because their brake isn't being used as a daily tool. It's only being used as a last resort. So part of the art of slowing down is retraining that vagal brake. And we do that by allowing your system to experience many small experiences of deceleration throughout the day instead of just waiting for a crisis. Now, disclaimer here, this doesn't look like simply forcing yourself to meditate for an hour when your body is screaming, okay? Instead, it looks like learning to sense in very small ways what it feels like to let your internal speed shift by even just 1 degree, 1 mile per hour. And we often do this in our Monday calls in the Body First Healing program, our nervous system gym or somatic practice call. We often will come into the call and we'll track what speed is my system showing up at? What's the pace today? We usually track it in miles per hour, for those of us who are outside of the United States, kilometers per hour. And then we do check-ins throughout our 30-minute session. Hey, has our pace or our speed changed? Has it gone up? Has it gone down? Has it stayed the same? And every single time when we leave that session, everyone's pace feels a little bit more settled by the time we're leaving. So ways that you can do this just in your everyday life. An example here, can you feel your back against the chair after a stressful email? Can you notice your exhale soften slightly when you step outside and when you see the sky? Can you allow your shoulders to drop just a tiny bit while you're talking on the phone? Each of those moments is your vagal brake practicing. And this practice is how you build tone. And this is where the important reframe really comes in. Okay, slowing down does not mean doing nothing. It means bringing the brake online so that you can be present with what you are doing instead of blasting through it on nothing but survival fuel. And that's going to take me into our next kind of topic here within the conversation, which is exploring how slowing down is not about doing less. It's about being present and more so aligned. So one of the biggest myths about slowing down is that it automatically means less doing, less work, less parenting, less showing up, less committing. Now, for most of us, that is not realistic. We have kids, we have jobs, we have bills, we have responsibilities, or maybe even communities and clients who depend on us. So if the only version of slowing down available is do less, then it will always, always feel out of reach because that's not realistic. So instead, what if slowing down was less about the quantity of what you do and it's more about the quality of how you meet it? So think of a day, okay, for instance, where maybe you moved quickly, but you felt relatively present. Maybe you were busy, but you were really aware of your body. Maybe you could feel your feet while you were cooking, or you could take a breath before you answered your child that was screaming at you. Okay. You can notice the sunset out the window, even though your sink is full of dishes. Okay. You were in motion. You were mobilized. You were moving, but you weren't absent. Now, on the other end here, think of a day where you moved quickly and you felt completely disconnected. You maybe got to the end of the day and you couldn't remember how your food tasted or what the air felt like on your skin or whether you even looked around and noticed anyone in the room with you. Your body did the day. It showed up, but you weren't there. You weren't present. Now, those 2 days might have had the same to-do list, right? Like, let's just think about that. Same to-do list. So the difference was not output, it was presence. So slowing down in a nervous system sense is not necessarily about the clock. It's about how often your body is allowed to catch up to your life. And this is why I often say that slowing down is the path to more sustainable capacity. When you move through your day in alignment with your body, then you waste far less energy fighting yourself. And why is that? Because you're not burning fuel on internal resistance. And on a personal note, what's interesting is I've actually been talking so openly in this past year or two about going deeper, not faster in life, about recovering from burnout, about working part-time and choosing slowness, buying land in Montana so that our family and the future Body First Healing Institute could have this different kind of rhythm. Yet, when I sat down with my team recently for our end-of-year reflection, I realized that I had actually done more in the past 12 months than in any year before. So I bought the Montana land in March. I published my book in March. I launched this podcast in September, and I opened the Somatic Practitioner Institute in November. That is wild. And still, I never felt burnt out along the way. And that was the moment where I understood in my own body that slowing down is not about doing less. It's about moving with yourself instead of against yourself. Now, over time, this means that you actually have more capacity to speed up in certain seasons because there's a rhythm of slowing that's being built in. And without that rhythm, every season becomes a sprint. With rhythm, some seasons are sprints and some are kind of these more steady jogs. Some are walks and some are quiet sits on the side of the trail while your nervous system kind of recalibrates, right? Okay, because it lives in sensation, not strategy, not theory, not to-do lists and time mapping and time blocking. Okay, so let's talk about what this looks like in the body in real time in these somatic small ways. So I first want to offer you some very concrete body-based ways, okay, to practice slowing down without having to clear your calendar or disappear from your life. These are going to be small, nervous system-sized experiments, we could say, that over time will begin to build a new pattern for you, a new pace, a new rhythm. Now, remember, your system likely learned urgency over years. Okay, so we are not capital NOT, not going to bully ourselves into stillness. Okay, we are going to instead offer these micro experiences of a different way. Now, the first is what I call arriving. Okay, several times a day, especially when you shift activities, I want to invite you to see if you can pause for just a few seconds and let your body arrive where you are. And that might look like this. You sit down at your desk, and before even touching your computer, you feel the chair holding you. You can notice the contact of your thighs, the weight of your hips, the shape of your spine. You might let one breath complete itself, and then you can begin your task. Now, notice how you're not adding in like a 20-minute meditation, okay? You are adding in a 10 up to 20-second arrival. That's it. Now, the second practice is going to be to soften your eyes. Many of us move through the day with this hard, narrow focus that signals the nervous system to stay on high alert. So instead, a few times a day, can you let your eyes widen just slightly? Can you look out the window and allow the depth of perception outside to meet you where you're at? Can you let your gaze rest on something alive like a tree or a plant or the sky, an animal, or even a photo? Okay. When your eyes soften, your system receives the message, we are not in immediate danger. We can scan for resource, not just threat. Okay, so the third practice here is going to be to feel your back. Okay, so urgency and forward motion often pull us into our front body. And this can look like the chest leaning forward, the neck jutting, attention out ahead. So instead, we are going to take moments to sense the back of our body. Okay, the back of your head, the shoulder blades and the trapezius muscles in between, your ribs, your sacrum. If possible, let something behind you hold you, even for just a breath. Okay, the back body carries the sense of being supported from behind. Just think of someone offering support through the gesture of, I've got your back, right? So rather than always needing to lead from the front, can we lean into the support of the back? Okay, the fourth practice here is what I think of as micro completions. So rather than racing, okay, from one task to the next without pause, can we give your system a moment to actually register that completion? That could look like finishing an email and then closing your eyes just for one breath, or finishing unloading the dishwasher and letting your hands rest on the counter for 3 seconds. This helps your body track that cycles can close instead of living in this perpetual state of almost done, what's next? Almost done, what's next? Now, the next practice, okay, is going to be to bring your awareness to your exhale. And I'm not talking about just forcing deep breaths here. Instead, we are simply noticing the end of an exhale and letting it lengthen slightly when it wants to. The exhale is where the vagal brake really speaks from. It tells your heart, your lungs, your digestive system, we can settle by one notch, one breath. And you can, of course, do this anywhere, like driving, working, parenting, or grocery shopping, right? Now, for the final practice, I would encourage you to name your season, even if nothing in your external life changes yet. So what could that look like? Maybe it's simply acknowledging my system feels like winter right now, but I am living as if it's summer. Okay, that can be really powerful because it brings compassion instead of judgment. It might also sound like, no wonder I'm tired. My body is asking for this inwardness, and I am asking it to outwardly sprint. Of course, I feel the way that I do. Of course, I'm exhausted. So just recognize here the pattern, okay? These practices are less about immediate transformation, and they're more about building a new relationship with your pace, right? Instead of your body being a thing that you drag through your day, it now becomes this living guide that you are in conversation and in relationship with. And I want to normalize that as you begin to do this, you might encounter grief or fear or frustration. And that is not a sign that you're doing it wrong, okay? It is a sign that you are finally listening. Okay, my friends, so as we bring this episode to a close, I just want to support you in integrating this back into your day, okay? Because it can be really easy to hear an episode like this and to either feel inspired for a moment and then forget, or feel overwhelmed because you simply cannot imagine how to change that pace in the reality that you live in. So I want to offer a few very gentle reminders as you begin. First, if you have the capacity, I would encourage you to share this language or even this episode with someone that you trust. Because sometimes simply saying, I'm trying to practice slowing down in small ways to a partner or a friend or a coworker or a boss or a therapist can bring some of that accountability and support. And it can also invite you out of the story that you have to carry your pace alone. Now, also remember here that slowing down is not a moral issue, okay? You are not a better person if your life looks slow, and you are not a worse person if your life is busy. Okay, this is not about optics here. It is about honesty. Honesty about what your body needs in order to be here in this one life in a way that you can actually feel present and feel aligned. So your nervous system is not behind, okay? It is doing exactly what it learned to do to keep you safe in the environments that you had to live in. And slowing down is not a betrayal of that. It's an evolution. It's a next step. It's you saying, thank you for getting me here. I am going to help us find a different pace now. So thank you so much for being with me in this conversation. My hope is that something in your body felt seen today. Maybe you recognize your urge to rush. Maybe you recognized your exhaustion, or maybe the part of you that has been longing to put down some of the weight. So if it resonated with you, remember that you can always share it with someone in your life who's also wrestling with pace and pressure. Remember, my friend, that if you want to go deeper into this work, my book, Body First Healing, is a beautiful place to start. And the Body First Healing program is also there if you want a contained 6-month somatic journey alongside others who are on a similar path. Thank you again for spending time with me this week on the podcast, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into the Body First Healing podcast. If this episode resonated with you, I would be so grateful if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with someone that you love. I'll see you back here next week, and until then, be gentle with yourself. You're doing the best you can with what you have, and that is more than enough. Just a quick note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult a qualified provider for personal support.